Now let's go back to Times Square, and a new piece of public art has been unveiled, and it's pretty underwhelming, I've got to say. I could use stronger language. Tell me the reason behind erecting this 12-foot statue of a fictionalised, mildly obese black woman in Times Square. It's not exactly a stunning piece of art, the craftsmanship there. It ain't Michelangelo's David, that's for sure.
It really is quite a long way from Michelangelo, isn't it? Look, I mean, this is the whole body positivity movement, right? I mean, this is kind of the whole notion of just trying to exalt people who just kind of just go with the diet and they don't exercise, and just trying to make it seem like that, oh, we've discriminated against obese people for so long by having all these flashy ads with the people who are rail thin there, and you're encouraging all these people to be anorexic. That's the argument there. But in reality, we want people to be healthy. I mean, last I checked, that's the whole MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, RFK Jr. platform. We don't want to be the most obese country in the world. At least I don't. I don't want America to be the most obese country in the world. But unfortunately, PR stunts like this, when you are just exalting morbidity, when you are exalting obesity there, I mean, what do you think is going to happen there? Frankly, this seems to me to be in fairly direct response, actually, to the whole RFK Jr. MAHA phenomenon there. They're basically saying, okay, you know what? I mean, our RFK is going to do this in DC when it comes to some vaccine stuff, to food dye, stuff like that there. But you know what? We're going to double down on the notion that it's actually okay to be overweight. The problem, among other things, is that when you exalt obesity in this country there, you are straining the healthcare system. And America's healthcare system, our entitlement programs, Medicare, it's all going bankrupt. So even if you don't particularly care about health, which you should, as a pure fiscal matter, encouraging this sort of stuff is not a good idea.
No, I'm with you there. And just aesthetically, it's not a beautiful piece of work. I think anything time you erect art somewhere, particularly something that's a 12-foot structure, it has to have some beauty about it. I think we've kind of lost track of that. They used to make beautiful buildings. They used to make beautiful public pieces of art. And now we've got things like that. Now, let's talk about the Trump administration's tariff policy, particularly the trade war with China. It's working as intended in driving down demand for Chinese-made products. Imports from China have dropped dramatically, Josh. What's that going to mean? Are we going to see shortages, big price hikes? Are you seeing some of those short-term impacts? And how far are we from getting some details about trade deals? The administration has been touting that they're not far away.
Well, I've not personally noticed any retail price hikes yet, but I think a lot of Americans are starting to potentially gear themselves for exactly that sort of thing. In fact, if you look at the international ports, their shipping, it really plummeted after the tariffs were announced, unsurprisingly, in mid to late April. But if you actually go back to the March data, it was actually, if I recall correctly, there was a pretty large increase actually in imports, including from China, because a lot of people were expecting this tariff rollout there. So look, we'll see. There definitely could be a short-term price effect. The good news, as you said, is that Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, is currently meeting this week with his Chinese counterparts. We'll see what happens. Look, China is ultimately more dependent on the United States than the United States is on China. It would be a tough economic decoupling. I'm not suggesting this is the kind of thing that can easily happen overnight. I'm frankly not suggesting that this is the kind of thing that could happen in the short to near term at all, frankly. But if America can ultimately become less dependent on its chief arch geopolitical rival, a country that literally flies spy balloons across our continent, a country that spies on us through everything from TikTok to Confucius Institutes on campus, if we can get less dependent on them, that is a good thing. And if we can reshore more jobs in the process, that's a doubly good thing, frankly.
Now, to another example of America First policies from the Trump administration. This one has some Democrat support. It's good to see. Senators Josh Hawley and Peter Welch are producing legislation to force drug companies not to charge high prices in the US than the international average. This war against Big Pharma, it's extending well beyond RFK Jr., Josh.
Yeah, this has rapidly become a very aggressive part, I think, of the new Republican Party's platform. But as you mentioned, this is a bipartisan piece of legislation. Senator Hawley and Senator Welch, who's a pretty liberal senator from the state of Vermont. Josh Hawley, who personally is one of my absolute favorite senators, I'm a big fan of his. He has very much been the tip of the spear of a lot more, actually, of these more, shall we say, populist inclined economic styles of bill legislation. He's had previous legislation when it comes to trying to cap credit card fees, a lot of stuff that your typical kind of 1980s nostalgia Republican wouldn't necessarily dream of there. But this is a new breed of Republican. I mean, the entire Donald Trump MAGA Maha coalition there. Yeah, it's partially about taking on Big Pharma for sure. And Big Pharma, I think, has a lot of bipartisan enemies across the entire spectrum these days in Washington, D.C. But it's also just partially about this kind of more economically nationalist, more populist style of economic statecraft as well. The tariff policy certainly fits into that as well there. Again, these are the kind of things that the Republican Party, prior to Donald Trump's descent down the gilded escalator at Trump Tower in 2015, never in a million years would have dreamed of. I mean, thinking back to like the 2012 Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan platform, the notion of punitive tariffs on other countries, the notion of trying to cap prescription drug prices. I mean, it would have been a totally foreign exercise there, but this is a very, very different Republican Party in the year 2025.
Very different. The neocons are gone. It's a new GOP. It certainly is. But before you go, I just want to quickly ask you about French President Emmanuel Macron. He hosted the Syrian leader Ahmed al-Shara, and earlier today he called on the US and the European Union to lift sanctions against Syria. Josh, this character al-Shara is an Islamist. He's a former member of al-Qaeda. He's got supporters right now targeting religious minorities in Syria. Should he be treated like some dignitary here?
This is disgusting. I mean, this is just utterly appalling. And unfortunately, Emmanuel Macron is not the only person who is treating this al-Qaeda jihadi in a suit as some sort of legitimate leader. I mean, you actually had multiple U.S. congressmen who became the first to fly to Damascus to meet with this Islamist thug about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago or so. So this is rapidly becoming a normalized situation that simply should not be normalized, because among the other things, what you alluded to is totally correct. There have been recent massacres. The media is really not reporting this at all. There have been recent massacres of the Syrian Druze population. It's horrific stuff there, because the current government in Damascus is an Islamist government there. This guy puts on a suit. He talks like he's a Harvard DEI professor, talking about the beauty of diversity there when it comes to different types of Sunni, Shia, Druze, Christians, so forth there. He is not a Westerner. This guy's an Islamist. He was literally a peripatetic al-Qaeda jihadi, going from country to country throughout the Middle East, fighting for various offshoots of al-Qaeda, from the original one to al-Nusra to HRT. And now Emmanuel Macron is talking about why. I literally don't get it there. The only thing I can think of is that Macron and France, they have a very unique relationship with Lebanon, of course, there. And Syria, the current government there is very cozy with Hezbollah, which still has a major presence in Lebanon there. So maybe that's what's going on here, but it's really quite appalling and, dare I say, even outright disgusting.
Josh Hammer, thank you so much for your time tonight.